What is up, guys? Vincent here, and today I wanted to talk about a new theory or take I have on life that I think has really come to fruition. I really started thinking about a lot more, and it makes a lot more sense when I think about it. So, this is going to be a video in which I talk about how I've approached the really big challenges that I've come across in life, and how I hope and would push other people to approach things as also just as human beings in this universe. Um, and today is a little special occasion because I'm wearing my Cal t-shirt. This is the same exact shirt that I wore every single day as a sixth grader, a seventh grader, an eighth grader, and a lot of high school because I had, for the longest time, my dream and goal in life was to be a student at UC Berkeley, and it getting into UC Berkeley, being a chemical engineer, becoming a physician. These are all monumental goals to have in life that will require enormous sacrifice and input. And it's not just putting in the time, it's also how you structure things. And what I want to do in this video is talk about um, how, and Malcolm Gladwell has commented on this beautifully in his book, David and Goliath. Uh, but what I keep finding, the more I look back on who I was and the way I've approached these challenges, is that in many ways, in many of my relationships or challenges in life, I am David. And the way David can beat Goliath is by playing the game that David knows David can win. And what I mean by that is that when you go back many centuries, I believe it was the Palestinians and another army, but uh, basically you had David, who was this shepherd, who was this pretty scrawny guy, going up against Goliath, who was this huge macho man, and there's no way that Goliath will lose in a fist-to-fist fight. And David knows this. And everyone was expecting David to fight Goliath exactly how, uh, like, David was another Goliath. And what David did that is so brilliant is that he did not uh, fight and play the game that Goliath was expecting him to play. Instead, David decided to um, use a slinger and hit Goliath in the head with a projectile, and because of that, he played a different game that David knew he could actually win and beat Goliath in. And as statistically unlikely as many military experts or normal human beings like me would expect, David ended up beating and doing something that no one thought he could do, which is beating Goliath. And what I want to hit home in this video is that when I'm applying to a job, or I'm applying to a school, or I'm applying to medical school, the key thing that I hit home and that I really focus hard on is when I'm not a tall person. I'm 5'5", and I'm not necessarily the most brilliant engineer. I'm not necessarily the best candidate for medical schools or for work. But at the same time, I bring my own skills to wherever I am, and the only thing I can do is the best with what I have available to me. And when, to give a good example, you're applying UC Berkeley, and you're in a very realistic or very real David versus Goliath scenario in which every other kid applying for that same seat at UC Berkeley is going to be very smart. They're going to have a really high GPA. They're going to have a really high SAT score. They're going to have great personal statements. They're going to be doing lots of extracurriculars. And if you fight the David and Goliath game and you're David, but you try to be a Goliath when you're not, you will lose to Goliath almost every single time. So this, to me, because I was rejected from UC Berkeley as a senior in high school, was a tipping point, which is another one of David's or Malcolm Gladwell's books, in which I began to realize that you will never win You will never beat Goliath trying to be Goliath. You can only beat Goliath by being David, by purposefully choosing your battles, focusing and hitting home what you know you can do as a person, as an individual, and knowing yourself well enough to sell yourself to somebody, to know exactly what matters and how you can be effective in a certain position in order to get ahead. And it's very, like, this took me a long time to realize, and I only realized it recently thanks to Linda. I really appreciate it. Um, and so when I'm applying for job interviews, how do I use this David and Goliath thing to help me? Well, when I'm applying and I know that everyone else there is going to have really good experience and they're going to have really good recommendations or references, um, if you're going to play the game of trying to best everyone in their own game of good recommendations and references, uh, or hours worked or years of experience, you're going to lose, because we are in a very competitive world these days, and you need to not only be David, but be proud to be David. And in my case, part of being David means having my own YouTube channel and doing things that I enjoy doing. Like, I genuinely like making these videos and talking about how I think about life. And uh, I'm not here to make money or to try to become famous. This is just something that I enjoy doing because it's intrinsically motivating to me. Um, and the key thing to take away from the David and Goliath story is that by being David, you should just take pride and be proud to have your own path in life and to have made the decisions that you've made in life. And I was at a medical school interview recently, and what surprised me most of all was that a lot of these kids who are brilliant, really good SAT or really good MCAT scores, really good GPAs, lots of hospital experience, clinical experience up the wazoo. Um, these are all very humble people, and they're very supportive people, and it warms my heart to see it. Um, but what I've kept finding in people that I've spoke to is that they are very hard on themselves. I'm hard on myself, um, and they discount a lot of what they're good at, and they all play this same game of, let me try to get the highest MCAT score I possibly can, and let me try to get the highest GPA I can, and let me do as much hospital experience as I possibly can in the ER. Let me talk all the time in my interviews about how experienced I am working in ERs. And the professors and the faculty that I was speaking to when I was in the med school interview were just saying, like, I've heard this same story so many times from so many people, that thank you for being like the one guy who comes in and says something different about primary care or about your YouTube channel or about all these other things. And to me, it was like a affirmation that maybe I am onto something with this idea, and that's why I'm sharing it with you guys. Is hopefully it helps some of you when you get very discouraged and when you have a really high goal in life, like to go to UC Berkeley or to become an engineer or to get a PhD or to be a doctor. Just know that even though you don't have even if you might not have the MCAT or the GPA or the whatever statistics score number there is to get there, you can still get there, um, by hitting home your selling points as an individual, and you need to have confidence in yourself, and what you bring to the table. Uh, I'm not going to lie, getting to UC Berkeley, this shirt not going so hot, but getting into UC Berkeley, I haven't worn this shirt in so many years because I was so discouraged after I didn't get in high school. What I learned from this whole Berkeley thing is that, uh, 80% of your application is statistics. It is the test score. It is the grades. It is the extracurriculars that look impressive. Um, the remaining 20%, or what makes the difference in whether or not they say yes or no to you, because they're going to have a lot of other people who are really qualified, is how well you show and separate yourself from everyone else. And the more I keep thinking about When I am in a medical school interview, and this is a very common essay you'll have, how are you going to bring diversity into our classroom in our medical program? This is the question where you have to really know yourself well, and you have to know why you are different from every other pre-med candidate in that room. First of all, I'm not a pre-med candidate. I'm a chemical engineer, and I work in biotech companies and pharmaceutical companies. I don't do the hospital clinical stuff as much. I still have experience because I wanted to make sure that, and I want to make sure that I know what I'm getting myself into. But at the same time, I want to have other things in my life that are going on that I appreciate, that I enjoy doing intrinsically, like making these videos, so that when people ask me, well, what do you bring to the table that I don't get with these other 10 candidates for this one seat I have in this medical school, you can actually speak to it, and you can be proud of yourself, and you can just keep fighting for what you really want in life. And if you think that walking into these interviews, you need to start talking about how smart you are and how well you did on the MCAT in your interview, you are wrong. You are already in that interview. They already see all of these impressive statistics behind you, and you wouldn't have gotten an offer if you didn't make it this far. What that interview is that last 20% where you really begin to set yourself apart from all the other candidates, and you begin to hit home why you are someone who is different from the other 10 people who are all gunning for that same spot in that program. And it is very competitive, it is very stressful, it can be nerve wracking, and it can seem like you're being selfish. And this is this is the nature of competition, which exists in nature and in human societies, where we've constructed social hierarchies and salaries and money and all these things about, I make more, so I must be better than you. But this is the world we live in, and you have to be able to uh, play basically this David and Goliath game. And I'm sorry if this video isn't too clear on a theme here, but the theme I'm trying to hit home is that if I walked into these med school interviews and I just tried to be uh, Goliath on everything, I'm going to lose to Goliath every time. David is not Goliath. David is only good in certain things like throwing slingers. Goliath will kick your ass if you try and you think that you're good enough to beat Goliath. And so the moral of this story, the moral that I want to hit home to people who watch this video, who really care about how to get what they want out of life. I don't consider myself a life coach yet, but it's just never discount what you bring to the table. Know that you are very often David in these David versus Goliath situations, whether you're applying for work when everyone you see around you is extremely talented and brilliant, when you're in university and you're surrounded by brilliant, passionate people, and their test scores are all higher than yours, or when you're applying to medical school and everyone seems like they are so high above you that you have no chance in hell of getting to their level. Just know that these are all things that you can overcome as long as you have the right mindset, as long as you believe in yourself, as long as you acknowledge actively the people who care about you in this world. You will go far, you will do well. And I really hope this video helps inspire people. And I'm sorry if I'm just droning on, but thank you guys for watching, and let me know if you have any questions.